So Ivry, thank you for joining us. You've played a really important role in the development of the sustainability community in Grant Thornton. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and your firm and what you do?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm only look young, but I'm almost 20 years working as a sustainability consultant. Today, I'm a partner at Grant Thornton, Israel, and I'm in charge of the sustainability department.
Congratulations on the new book, which is Corporate Responsibility in the Digital Age. Could you just give us a little bit of an outline? What is the book about?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Actually, I wrote the book because I found that there are many books on sustainability, and many books about technology and the digital age, but even not one of them about the connection between the two strategic lines. I divided the book into three. I call it The Good Planet, which are all the expectations and the needs about the climate change, about all the phenomena. The second one is, I call it The Good Challenge, which is like a wake-up call for corporations to start to understand that business is not as usual, and there's no longer a nice to have, but we need to implement sustainability. And the third part, which is the main one, is actually a roadmap that take the clients and the consultant step by step to the main chapters of sustainability, from ethical program to supply chain to reporting to community engagement, etc. And I hope it will be, on one hand, challenging for food for thought, and on the other hand, practical tips or experience at Toronto.
Fantastic, thank you. And you as you know, you are a very important voice in the global organization around sustainability and corporate responsibility. Can I just start by asking you about the COVID-19 situation this year, and how would you say that that's impacted the sustainability agenda, both in positive sense and in a negative sense?
Yes, actually, I think it's a very good question, and I thought about it a few times in the last month. It had a few dimensions to this. One, first of all, but the most important, I think it put, maybe for the first time, sustainability issues, human healthcare, human issues into the main table of the boardroom. You see more and more top management and board of directors dealing with the health of the employees, with payments to suppliers, with many things that for many years were not on the critical path of the company. And I think once you do it, you don't have a way back. I mean, it's become part of the main agenda of the company. And other things that happened and influence is that I would say it differentiates almost immediately the real solid sustainable companies from the greenwash companies, because it's not easy and maybe it's not comfortable, to take care for your suppliers, for the clients when it's crisis time. But once it's emerged the crisis, you see immediately these kind of companies that try to do the best in order to keep their employees to work, and those that use the opportunity as an excuse to let them go. And in many cases, also the relationship with the suppliers, to take care for the small suppliers and for the customers, and to invest money in continuity of the working process. So it was there was a wise guy said once that once you take the water out of the swimming pool, you see immediately who is naked and who is not. So in many ways, it was a good mirror for the market, for the ecosystem.
You talked about greenwash. Tell me about greenwashing. What does that mean?
Greenwash is when a company is claiming to have very positive skills or contribution to the society or to environment, but when you look at the company from the inside, you see it's only a very minor from the epidermis of the companies that doing the sustainability exercise, and the majority of the impact of the company is still negative. So it's claimed to have something that it shouldn't do. It shouldn't have.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to the book, and I know you talked about the book as a roadmap. You use the analogy of a roadmap, and I think for many Grant Thornton clients around the world, they're looking at this agenda and they probably feel quite intimidated. It's quite a complex agenda. It's a big agenda. What would your advice be in terms of where would you say for a classic Grant Thornton client, where should they start? Where should they start in thinking about this agenda?
First of all, they need to call Grant Thornton to help them. But after they do this, I would say that in a perfect world, I would like the company to look for its purpose and vision, and then take from this, the mission statement, etc. But in a practical way, maybe 2 or 3 tips. One is, first of all, to look at to do a benchmark on the global sector. What are the achievements in sustainability, and you can learn a lot from it. I would also say maybe to make a stakeholder dialogue to understand the expectation from different stakeholders from this company. Of course, it's different if it's a financial institution or a chemical company, but I think it's one of the main arguments in corporate responsibility is to listen not only to your shareholder, but to the variety of your stakeholders. And then, of course, after you know where you live and where are your competitors and what do you want to achieve, you can do like any other project management kind. I mean, gap analysis to be developed to a working plan and to implement it. And of course, and I was not. It was not a joke. I mean, I think that if you call a consultant that did it many times in the way, it's like a journey, I think it will save the company time and money.
Okay. You in the book, and the nature of the title, Corporate Responsibility in the Digital Age, you consider sustainability and the transformation that a business needs to make to be more sustainable in a similar way to digital transformation. How do you see those two things connecting?
Yeah, there are many connections naturally, but I want to speak about 2 of them. The main connection is, I argue in the book that exactly like in the digital transformation and revolution, companies that didn't apply this kind of transformation and were not flexible enough will not survive. So it is no longer an issue of nice to have, but it's a must. It's a matter of survival. And I really believe that the sustainability revolution is in many ways similar to the digital and technological revolution, just for the survivor and for the growing. And another connection is that technology, like in any other aspect, make everything more fast, more transparent, more connected. So it is, and we see it even now in COVID-19, processes become much more difficult to handle because it's becoming in an immediate way. And because everything is transparent and the digital technology and the social networks, company must understand they need to be more ethical and more transparent because you cannot hide anything. So it's for their own benefit to be a proactive and more ethical and more sustainable.
And just following on from that, Ivry, in terms of digital transformation, one thing we all experience now, and I'm working from home at the moment, is virtual working, and that's becoming a significant factor in most societies and economies. What would you say is the implication or the impact of virtual working on the sustainability agenda?
Again, as we indicated in the beginning of the conversation, something changed in the relationship between managers and employees, between different stakeholders. You see managers talking with their employees from their saloon in a t-shirt. Something from the conservative hierarchy that we were years in companies has changed. Managers understood almost intuitively that if they won't take care for the health of their employees, they will not have a business. And sometimes, usually it was of the safety people or the human resources person, top manager. Many of the values go back to basic in a way that we need to groom our people, and we need to take care for our stakeholders in order to continue. And I think once you do it, again, you cannot go back. And of course, it will be like some changes in the future. I hope that will solve the pandemic, but it was branded in the decision making systems of the company. How important it is to take care of the healthcare, the family, the work-life balance is really changed. Of course, I also said in the book that every positive also has negative, because you may see a lot of overtime working because there is over connectivity, and you on one hand you have more flexibility to be with your family, on the other hand the borders become less clear between work and family. So I guess you know, there are a lot of talking about the future workplace before the COVID, and there were like Gartner research I mentioned in the book, etc., like 10, 12 things that will happen in 20 years, and you see that many of them took place in 1 year. So it's before you need to convince the budgets and the CEOs to prepare themselves or to do upskilling and digital connectivity. And now you don't need to convince them. They understand it's part of their business continuity, and like any other DRP programs, they need to invest in it.
So I'm just going to go back a second to the question of COVID, and you said about how the digital transformation's accelerated. My sense is that there's because of the cost pressures on businesses and the performance pressures on business right now, I think it's a little unclear as to whether sustainability needs to take a few backward steps before it can move forward again. And I don't know whether you have a sense of whether sustainability has risen up the agenda, or because of those business pressures or financial pressures, it's had to take more of a backward step. What is your observations on that?
Yeah. First of all, I think we still need a perspective, you know, to analyze, because it's almost an historical process, and we are inside the exercise. We need to be out in order to have But I think in many ways it's a dialectic. It's go to both sides. On one hand, you may say that, again, as we said before, it took back the discussion on basic values of human being, of humanity. On the other hand, especially from the US, you hear a lot of strategy called human first, takes the environment out. I mean, the president there said factories in the recovery stage from the pandemic, they will be able to pollute more and to have more emissions, etc., because first we need to take care for the people. So it's go both ways, but I believe that because we are still in the middle of the event, it has more the discourse on sustainable issues and semi-sustainable issues from the periphery of sustainability has increased for sure. I think it's nice to indicate for the people that the IBR research in this context that is going to be published soon, that ask 10,000 managers all over the world about the connection between sustainability and strategy. And I think that most of the people think that on one hand, sustainability will become more important, but on the other hand, they said because of the financial crisis, and they will put it aside for a time. So it's something I'm sure that will support sustainability.
Okay, thank you. You talk about risks in the book, and I think maybe you identified some new risks or emerging risks. So you talk about social risk, and you talk about ESG risk. Could you talk a little bit about those risks and how they may start to come through on the risk registers of companies?
Yes, again, it's of course connected to technology, because once everything is out in the air and open and transparent, you have more social risk. What is social risk? It's actually every two people who want to promote an agenda against or for a company or for an issue. Today, they don't have any barrier of entry to do it. They don't need to pay a lot of money to organize people to come to the city hall, etc. They just do a good post in the Facebook, and it has a possibility to become viral, and companies cannot ignore it. And exactly as we saw in the Black Lives Matter and even in the Me Too, Occupy Wall Street, all these issues are social issues that come and confront companies, and companies cannot ignore them anymore. It's not a democracy, a full democracy, but the balance of powers has been changed for sure. And we call it, in the sustainability language, we call it the social license to operate. So we are not talking about legal constraints, we are not talking about regulation, we are just talking about the public opinion that can be very easily maneuvered and focused toward the company or an issue, and the company cannot ignore it, because it can become huge in days because of technology. And I really believe that the new managers need to transform their management thinking in order to have more dialogue with stakeholders, with public groups, in order just for the continuity of the company. I'm not talking, it's not about nice to have, it's not about free huggers, it's about the ability to continue to do business.
Thank you.
And you mentioned about the ESG. The ESG is one aspect of it is about what investors are looking, and it's very important that you mention it, because we see more and more capital of institutional investors that are, but even as private investors and family offices, that looking for the ESG aspects of the company before they take the decision to invest. Having said that, we need, as consultant, as Grant Thornton, to help our clients to understand and to decode all this ESG movement. All the investors from BlackRock, which is the biggest investor in the world, to KKR, to UBS, and to the smaller investors, they are talking about ESG issues. And I'm not referring to the impact investment, which is still for the early adopters. I'm talking about the mainstream investment, the big money, the trillions, that look more and more because of risk management, not because of, again, of ideology, because of risk management. They understand that renewable company will be in the long term more profitable than the fossil energy companies, etc.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to move on to a subject that's close to the hearts of accountants, which is sort of international standards. And we see a lot of activity around international standards for sustainability and non-financial reporting, whether it's the World Economic Forum or the IFRS or SASB, etc. What's your view on how Grant Thornton as an organization should respond to those international standards? What should we be thinking about as a network?
First of all, it's a very good opportunity to enjoy the economy of scale of a network, and because there are many standards and many framework, and we need to, first of all, to map all this framework to understand who is an expert in which framework, and then to enjoy the diversity of experience that we have in the network. But we don't necessarily need only to respond. Maybe you can proact also. I remember that the previous chairman, Ed Nussbaum, was one of the founders of the IRC, which is the Integrated Reporting Council. And it's a good way to influence not only sustainability, but business as a whole, if you are in these councils and committees. I want to give a for our team. I think that, from my experience, once you know the people in this framework, in the Bloomberg, in the GRI, in the SASB, and you are able to talk with them and to ask them and to have a dialogue with them, you give a great value and an asset for your clients, because usually it looks like far away and untangible. And once you know the person and you can negotiate your, let's say, your results in the framework or in the standard, you bring to the table great assets for your clients.
Excellent. And just maybe a different question, Avery, which is about Grant Thornton works with a wide range of different types of clients, from the very large global organizations to mid-cap and mid-sized listed companies through to private business, government, etc. Often it sounds like this agenda is particularly focused on the large corporations, the multinationals, etc. How relevant is this to mid-sized businesses, the types of clients that most member firms have in a larger volume?
Not only that, I think that it's very relevant, because the principle behind sustainability is the same, even for moms and pop, shops. Maybe it's not Tesco, but they can clean the shop. They can be honest to the customers. They can recycle the waste, and they can maybe give some leftovers to the poor people in the neighborhood. So on the principle level, it's the same. And I think it's a great opportunity, because you're right, Paul, in the way that many of the clients of professional sustainability services are the large corporations, and we can be the world experts on sustainability for SMEs. In my country, for example, even the big companies may perceive this as SMEs in the US or in Europe. So we know it can be done. You can implement it, and it can be our USP. We are more, let's say, down to earth and more flexible and agile to give them a good service and to take them through. And by the way, for them, in a more global and connected world, they need to be more and more sustainable in order to sell as suppliers to the big sustainable corporations. So the demands for and the expectation for them from their client side will increase soon.
Absolutely, and I think we're seeing that already, aren't we? So maybe just a final question, Avery. If we fast forward, we're currently looking at Strategy 2025, and it feels like sustainability is going to be more central to that strategy. If we fast forward to 2025 and we look at Grant Thornton at that time, what would you like to see with respect to the sustainability agenda? What does the 2025 version of Grant Thornton look like with respect to some of these factors?
Yeah, I think that we should go on two channels, and our DNA, both our DNA and USP for the clients, should be more sustainability experts, externally and internally. We must walk the talk, and I'm very happy that we were able to contribute for the Global Impact Review as a first step. And I think we did in the last 2 years a great progress as a network to this direction. And in 5 years' time, I really want us to be the world expert, maybe specifically to SMEs and to some of the content issues of sustainability, maybe the supply chain, maybe the ESG investments. You cannot be an expert in everything, but to choose 2 or 3 flags and to be number 1 in the world, I think it's a achievable goal, and we are really on the way for achieving it.